Good day, my name is Bluesuit and today I'll be going over my review of the early access turn-based tactics fantasy roguelite known as Immortal Tactics War of the Eternals. In Immortal Tactics War of the Eternals, the celestial void has come to the world to eradicate all life as it is known. In this reality, the four gods of good, evil, nature, and humanity have ceased hostilities to deal with this grave threat. As the game begins, you take on the role of one of the army leaders who will lead a band of heroes to destroy the generals of the void. As a roguelite, you won't have many leaders unlocked at the start of the game, and additionally the leader skills and troop types are also limited. As you complete runs and unlock achievements, more and more become available, and in this lies Immortal Tactics' most addictive gameplay elements. Each leader has 3 different abilities that they can equip that fits the motif of their character. The Divine Leader, for example, is defensive and supportive, and their abilities do things like healing allies or reviving those who have fallen. The Angel of Death, on the other hand, has abilities that can buff your troops' damage or even outright kill non-boss enemies. These skills, once unlocked, charge as you progress through a run, and you can usually use them about once per battle to drastically change the course of a fight. Personally, I prefer the Divine Leader, whose healing abilities can really cover up your mistakes, but each one really feels balanced, and even though I don't see it on the current roadmap, I'm excited to see what other new leaders come out of early access. Also, in regards to early access, Immortal Tactics definitely isn't hobbling into EA filled with bugs and devoid of features. Instead, what exists here is a smaller game that feels complete in almost every aspect, and in all honesty, could be released as a full game with some minor polishing right now. However, it's clear by the developer roadmap that there are some big ideas on the horizon, and that community involvement will be a major influencing factor going forward. Unlocking new troops in Immortal Tactics, or heroes as they are called, is really what drew me into the gameplay loop. Each one feels really unique and serves a specific purpose, like the mage who focuses on ranged AoE, or the shaman who specializes in debuffing enemy troops. As you make your way through battles, these heroes will independently earn experience points to unlock and upgrade their abilities. On each run, you can only take 3 troops with you, and it's really addicting to try out different combinations of troops, so when you unlock a new troop type, it unlocks a bunch of potential army combinations to experiment with. I'm sure it would bring a whole slew of balanced challenges, but I do wish you could take 2 or 3 of the same troop type with you, just so that I had more army combinations to play with. Part of the reason is that these different army combos are the main driving force behind this roguelite's replayability. So once you've unlocked all of the troops and experimented with how they all interact, you've mostly exhausted Immortal Tactics' fresh content. As you begin a new run and you've selected your army and leader, you can choose which map to run through. Currently, there are only 2 available maps with their own enemy types, visual style, and achievements to hunt down. The battle maps in both of these locations are chock full of hazards and pickups and obstacles that make fighting about much more than just your hero's skills. Each battle in your run will also have its own primary and secondary win conditions that you'll need to meet to progress and charge your leader's ability. Most of the time you'll have to defeat every enemy to move on to the next stage, but often enough you'll find yourself activating altars, saving helpless animals, or simply surviving through a certain number of rounds. As I said, battles take place in turns, but more specifically in move phases and attack phases. What felt unique about Immortal Tactics is that when a new turn begins, enemies move, and then the player moves, and then the player attacks, and finally the enemy attacks. Because enemies don't get to move and immediately attack the way the player does, it makes it really easy for ranged heroes to kite melee units around the map, because the enemy melee units will never be able to both move into range and then make an attack. Immortal Tactics offsets this disadvantage by often swarming you with melee units. However, if you're able to take out the enemy archers first, most fights become significantly easier. The last 2 phases that come up are the environment phase, where you can get hit by elemental effects like lightning, and then the reinforcement phase. Every few turns or so, more enemies will spawn on the map in random locations. You can see when the reinforcement phase is coming up, but because you don't know where enemies are going to spawn, it can make for some dangerous situations. I'm not a huge fan of this mechanic currently, as you can easily get unlucky and have enemies spawn next to your healer or even right in the middle of your party with no warning. Generally, it's a good idea to drag these fights out as long as you can to maximize your experience gained through these reinforcement phases, but eventually eventually there comes a point where you no longer earn experience after a set number of turns. This can also be tough for some team comps where you're not doing enough damage to kill all of the enemies before the next wave spawns. You can pick up Immortal Tactics War of the Eternals when it launches tomorrow on Steam for 15 bucks. And like most early access titles, it's not going to be worth that right away, but it does already come super close. It may be missing all of the bells and whistles of a full release game like controller support or a great deal of graphical and language options, but for a day one early access title, it already nails a lot of the things that it sets out to achieve. Its turn-based combat is fast-paced, the graphical style and UI are unique and organized, and most importantly, the roguelite gameplay loop is easy to pick up and play for 20 minutes at a time, while still having the depth to suck you in for several hours. So I'm valuing Immortal Tactics War of the Eternals at $14, and I highly recommend it to fans of turn-based tactics games who are looking for a simple yet engaging title that they can pick up and play over and over again. I hope you enjoyed this review of Immortal Tactics War of the Eternals. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought about it. Until next time.